Alright guys, welcome to the 4 minutes. As you can see, it's a chilly week, hence our scarves all over the place.
And a cup of coffee.
Scarves by Angel Omari. Does she have a page?
Yes, we'll link her page here. So it's very cool. You need to have your things shown.
She's brilliant with easy za kushona. She shonas trousers. She
actually she doesn't shona trousers. Shona socks.
She shonas socks, gloves. You know.
Socks is even a word.
It is now. She shonas moshori. Zinaitwa moshori.
Moshoris.
Those ones.
And sweaters.
And sweaters. If you want a wallet that has been shown out, she can show a wallet for you.
I mean, it's all about living the African life.
So I wanted us to just talk about soul ties. This is something that I've been hearing in the corridors of Instagram being talked about, the corridors of YouTube being talked about. And I think it's one of those topics that have there's a lot of myth and truths mixed in within. And personally, we believe in soul ties.
Yeah, we believe they do exist.
We believe they exist. We believe they work.
Do you believe in soul ties? Is that a word? Yeah.
But we don't want you to just believe because Akina Kati said so. I want us to just go on a journey and start a conversation. And hopefully, by the things we are going to discuss about, you guys will be able to decide whether you think they are real or they are just things that people talk about. Yeah. So, this subject tends to be very touchy. Yeah. It tends to make people become very sensitive. So if you don't agree with some of the things, we'll say it's fine. Yeah. It's fine. At least it shows you have a brain and that you can think for yourself. So if you don't agree, ni sawa. However, disclaimer, you have to be very civilized in your disagreements, even on the comment section. Otherwise, if you come on the comment section making noise and talking badly, make sure you write noisemakers. Andika noisemakers. If you come there making noise, Soila andika noisemakers. Yeah. And then, when is this house supposed to be washed?
They'll come and wash for us.
You'll come and wash this house. There's a pile of clothes here. You'll come and wash. Na watufanyie nini ingine?
Watuoshe pia. Okay. You don't want to be washed.
That was going so well. That was going so well. You had one job. Stick to the script.
It's part of choice.
Okay. Anyway, so
sorry.
What do you know about soul ties?
What I know about soul ties is where souls are now interconnected and they become one. It means what it says, souls connected, like you're tied to someone else in the realms of the spirit. So there are certain things that you see yourself depicting or showing or expressing that you have picked from someone else. Now, soul ties, yes, it's a connection in the realms of the spirit, but it has an effect in the physical. Yeah. Okay.
So, for me, what I know about soul ties is this. First of all, let's start from the most basic level, because for us to understand what a soul tie is, we have to understand what a soul is in the first place. Otherwise, if we just go around saying soul ties, but you don't really understand what a soul is, you may not really understand how the whole mechanism works. Yeah. Because sometimes I hear people talk, and to some people, the soul and the spirit feels like the same thing. Yeah. To some people, the soul and the mind feels like the same thing. So I think it's just good for us to work on some definitums. So let's start. A human being is made up of 3 parts. I'm going to be very basic and practical with this. A human being is made up of 3 parts.
I want to touch the parts.
Guys, this is what I deal with every day, so the first part of a human being is the body. Yeah. This is the physical part of you that interacts with the physical world. This is the part of you that interacts with the 5 senses. You see, you hear, you smell, you touch. Yeah. Is there any other sense?
And love your husband.
Yeah. Okay, Soila, what have you put in this tea? The body type of you, the body part of you, this is the external part that interacts with the natural world. Yeah. The things you can see and touch. Yep. The second part of you is the soul part. This is the part of you that interacts with self. It is self-conscious, it is self-aware.
I'm sorry.
Soila. Okay. The second part of you
What are you going to Yeah, they become a tattoo, so that's why I moved. I'm sorry. Okay, I love you.
Takufinya. The third part of you, this is the spiritual part of you. This is the part of you that interacts with the spiritual dimension, with the spiritual world. Now, I know some people say, oh, I don't believe in the spiritual world. You know, this is just things that people imagine. These are just things that people make up. But the spiritual world is as real as the physical world. And I just want to give a few examples without trying to be so deep. Let me just give a few examples of the spirit. And you'll understand that you're actually a spiritual being. Have you ever met somebody and then in Kenya, in Kenya, wachana na mimi, leave me alone.
You had hair, babe.
I'll send you out there until I finish this vlog.
Okay.
Okay. Have you ever met someone and then in Kenya we say damu ilikata? Have you ever met somebody and then you just felt like, ai, damu yangu ilimkata, nilimit tu mtu, you know, my blood refused, our blood just couldn't mix. And then a few days or sometime later, you hear some story about that person and you're like, hiya, by the way, I was right, that guy was not a good guy. You know, probably it was a business deal or it was some interaction you're supposed to, and you just felt something inside you be like, unaona. Another example is when, you know, you wanted to do something or you wanted to go somewhere. And then again in Kenya, in Swahili, we say, kitu iliniambia. Niko nataka kwenda huko, kitu ikaniambia nisiende. You know, I wanted to go there and something told me not to go.
Or you have gone there and then something bad happens to you and then you're like, I knew it.
Yeah, you're like, there's that realization that something told me not to go there.
Yeah.
No. And basically, people call that, they call that thing by different names. Some people call it intuition, some people say instinct, some people call it the sixth sense. Some people call it gut feeling. You know, you say, I have this gut feeling, my gut is telling me one or two things. And really what it is just the spirit that is aware of what is happening in the spiritual world. Because in the spiritual world, things are not restricted by time. So your spirit is actually able to know certain things in the spiritual world that may happen in the future, but logically your mind cannot yet comprehend.
Yeah.
Or deja vu, for example. Something happens and you're like, deja vu, I saw this before. But logically speaking, you know that you've not seen that before. But you have this eerie feeling like I've been here. And that's basically your spirit man giving you a glimpse of what it knows in the spirit world. Because the spiritual world has no, it's not limited by time. So your spirit can actually know certain things that will happen in the future. Yeah. And that's why sometimes you dream of things and then a few days later they happen. Yeah. Because your spirit is not limited like our mind is. So the reason sometimes you find yourselves in situations where you feel like my gut was telling me, that's basically your spirit giving you a glimpse of what it knows in the spiritual world, which your mind doesn't yet have facts about. Yeah. Sawa?
Yeah.
So tumeelewana, the spirit, a man is made up of three parts. The spirit part, which interacts with the spiritual world, the soulish part, which interacts with self or the soulish realm, and then the body part, which interacts with the natural world. Now, put the spirit...
What do you mean, like self interacts with self?
That's what I'm coming to.
Okay.
You're a very attentive student.
I know.
Nitakuweka class representative.
I'm here as an audience, by the way.
Sasa always make us. So, with those three parts, let's put aside the body for a while. Let's put aside the spirit for a while. Let's interact with the soul. What exactly is the soul? Now, the soul also has three parts. Don't confuse.
Okay, baby.
A human being has three parts: body, soul, spirit. Now within the soul,
it's a ring finger.
Yeah, it's a ring finger, but it didn't confuse. People might think I'm trying to say something I'm not. Within the soul, there are also three parts. The first part is the mind. This is the intellect. This is your intelligence. This is the place of you that interacts with logic. The thought process. This is the mind. That's the first part of the soul. The second part of the soul is the emotional part. This is the part where you feel things. You experience emotions. And then there's the third part, which is the part of the will. This is the part of you that enacts. It's the part of you that expresses. It's the part of you that wills to do. Sawa sawa. So the soul is three: mind, emotion, and will. Now how they work, I'll come and tell Soila, Soila, I love you.
I love it too.
Now Soila will receive that information with the mind. She starts to think about it, and the more she thinks about it, it creates an emotional reaction within her. So it started with a thought. The more she meditated on that thought, the more it started becoming emotional. After a while, the emotions become full. They have a fullness. And now she's like, Curtis told me he loves me. I like how that makes me feel. So out of the fullness of how I feel, let me do something back to show that I appreciate what he said. So she ends up, she decides she says I love you back, or she decides to hug me, or just do something good because of what started in the thought process. Mm-hmm. So that's how the soul works: thoughts, emotions, will, or expression. So we are clear till that point. Now, for us to say that you have a soul tie, then it means that your thoughts, your emotions,
your will,
and your will is connected to somebody else's thoughts, emotions, or will. It means that my thoughts, emotions, and my will, which is my soul, is somehow being influenced by somebody else's thoughts, emotion, or will. Now, by influence, it doesn't mean that that my soul has a leash on her, that now when I move like this, she also moves like this. It basically means that there was some deposit. We poured into each other something when we created a soul tie. Is tumeelewa?
Yeah.
Now, the other thing about soul ties,
I'm
sorry. The other thing about a soul tie, not all soul ties are evil. Because I think every time we talk about a soul tie, it's always a negative connotation.
It has a negative, yeah, that's true.
Not all soul ties are bad, and not all soul ties are created through sexual relations. For example, by the mere fact that we are friends, that enough has created a soul tie between us. That's why number two cannot work together unless they agree. No. When you become friends with somebody and you work with them for a while, your mind, you start to think the same.
That's why they say people say that you're a sum total of the five people you hang out with. Yes.
Because just by being friends or hanging out with people, there is some connection happening. So there are soul ties that are formed simply by you being close to someone in a relation, in a friendship context. You have soul ties with your relatives. You grew up together, of course, there's that family beat. That's why when you lose a relative, it hurts. Emotionally, it hurts, in your mind, and even in your will, there are things you just don't feel like doing because you've lost this person. And now there's the third kind of soul tie, which is now the soul tie that is created through sex. Now, sex is a very strange thing. You remember when you said that a human being has three parts: body, soul, and spirit. Sex is one of those things that interact with the entire three part of man. Because when you're having sex with somebody, your body is involved. Your spirit is also involved. And your soul is definitely involved. Because when you're having sex with somebody, your mind is into it. Yeah. Your mind is in that place.
Your will.
Your emotion is also in that place. And your will, obviously, that's why you're expressing yourself through your will. And doing certain things in that process of having sex. When you're having sex with somebody, it's beyond just what you're feeling. You're accessing that person's deepest, innermost part, and that's why rape is the worst thing you can do to someone. You are forcing yourself into their mind. You are forcing yourself into their emotions. You are forcing themselves into their will. Because after that act, that person is going to think about you, even when they don't want to. Because of the trauma of the act. Emotionally, they are going to feel certain things. They are going to be bitter, they are going to be hurt, they are going to be fearful. Even if they don't want to. And in the area of their will, they are going to be reactive to certain things. They'll just be snapping and doing things and expressing certain things because of the trauma of that act. That's why rape is, it's truly a violation. It's truly a violation. You are not just harming that person on a physical level. You're harming them you see, when two people are having sex consensually, like both of them want it, there's the place of they're inviting each other to each other. But when you're forcing it on somebody, you're violating them because their mind was not ready to invite you. You're literally breaking down somebody's door against their will.
Yeah.
So it's very different, and that's why it's bad. Now that we've talked about that, I want us to do an introspection. Because remember we said we don't want you guys to just believe because Curtis and Soila said so. I want us to go on a journey, and I want you guys to do a self-introspection so that you decide for yourself whether this thing is really real or it's not. I don't know, I'm sure there are some of you who are watching us and you've been sexually active before, or probably you are even now. And some of you probably you've always abstained. Depending on which side of the spectrum you fall. I want you to just sit down and think, and this might take a few days, may take a few weeks. Start to introspect, start to interrogate your heart and yourself. Are there certain characters and attitudes that you have nowadays that you never used to have before you started becoming sexually active? Just think about it. Are you all of a sudden, the moment you started engaging in sex, did you all of a sudden start struggling with trust?
And engaging in sex both premarital,
yes,
and also in marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you all of a sudden struggle with trusting people? Do you all of a sudden struggle with, fear, anxiety?
And in marriage, you all of a sudden have some self-confidence here and there.
Yeah.
Do you now feel more loving towards your husband, more appreciative of where you are, more conscious of yourself in a positive way? Because these are the things now. We'll sometime talk about sex and marriage and sex outside of marriage and the things that come with those things.
Think about it this way. I'm sure you've heard people saying, when they talk about couples who've been married for a long time, what do people usually say about them? Mmeanza kufanana. You guys are beginning to look the same.
Yeah.
And they're not usually talking about physical appearance. They can just feel that the aura or the air around you guys is so alike. You've literally become one.
There's some characters that are similar.
Because your souls have been
attitude.
merged such that people can even be able to predict that both of you will respond in this way, you will react in this situation like this. So I want you to just take time and introspect yourself. Are there certain, probably you never used to be a person who is angry. But now when you look at yourself, you realize, my ex used to have this kind of angry tantrums, and you kind of started having them when you got into a relationship with them. So just do an introspection. Did you feel like when you broke up with this person, and after years, you thought you moved on, and then you just meet with them at the mall, and there's this mini heart attack that just comes out of nowhere.
That's true.
And you almost want to duck before they see you.
Like, oh, you're there.
Why is it that seeing that person is eliciting certain reactions towards you if you are not connected to them in a certain way?
They remind you of certain things.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are certain emotions that you have that are still pegged on the experiences that you had with them.
And that's why it takes time to get rid of certain experiences.
Yeah.
Because it's mind, emotions, and will.
Yeah.
It's in the deeper parts of you, such that you have, like when you have depression, as in there are things you have to go through where people say time heals.
Do you believe that really?
That time heals?
Yeah.
Not really.
I believe it's contextual.
Yes, it's contextual.
Yeah.
And
there are things time will heal, but there are things
time will never heal.
Time can't just heal. There has to be
God.
something else.
It's God who comes through.
And this is a topic that is really wide, and we might invite other people to just come and have a discussion about
We
this.
will invite.
We will invite. It's not just going to be us. And so before you react, take time. Just think about what we've said and interrogate yourself. Where did you get certain attitudes from? Certain characteristics, certain ways of thinking, certain emotional responses. Bye guys.
Bye guys.
Yeah.